So this is my first time using this recording room, so the audio is really fucked throughout the whole thing. I'm really sorry about it, but I recorded it and edited it, and I'm not redoing it. Anyways, thank you. Hope you enjoyed the video. Okay. Today, I'm reviewing your music, your albums, your singles. All of the singles, all the music, all the albums that I'm reviewing today are coming from the wonderful people on our Discord server for this channel. So if you're looking for like a music community or people to talk to about music, feel free to join in the description below. But anyways, let's not take too long. First, I'm going to talk about the singles, and then we'll move on to all the albums. And before we really get into all this, just keep in mind, I am just some random guy on the internet. I don't know shit about music, okay? I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know how to make music. So all of you, the fact that you've made music, you got that over me, okay? At the end of the day, this is just my opinion. Feel free to disagree. Tell me why I'm wrong. But yeah, this is all in good fun. I'm just rating the music. I'm treating the music how I'd rate any music from any big artist because I respect your guys' art and I want to be honest with how I felt about it. For our first single, we got a cover from I Pick Your Pocket of an Ichika Oba song. Probably said that name wrong, Gemstone. And I mean, for a lot of the singles here, I'm not gonna spend too long talking about it. It's just one song. And in this case, it's a cover. I'll just say this, the guitar is played very well. The singing, which I'm assuming Japanese isn't your first language, pretty good, honestly. As somebody who doesn't understand Japanese, I was like, this shit sounds right. But the cover was able to capture the original feeling and sound of the original song itself very well in a cover. I liked the inclusion of, I think there was a feature from somebody else on here, and you guys kind of layered vocals on. Can't really fault it for anything, but you know, it's just a cover. So for, you know what, here for the singles, I'm not going to rate them out of 10 or anything. We're just going to say yay or nay, okay? Thumbs up or thumbs down or whatever. And for this one, yeah, I'll say yay. Yeah, Gemstone by I Pick Your Pocket. Good cover of an Ichika Oba song. I enjoyed it. It was beautiful. It was serene. It was calming. And you were able to capture the Ichika Oba feeling of her music through your own. The next one, I don't think has a title, but basically it was Kirby as the cover, I think, and it was this 40-second long song. The person who sent this in is Mago, I think is how you say it. They said they were just fucking around. It's 40 seconds. It's kind of this loud, disorienting song, very high energy, very short, again, 40 seconds long. Not really much to say. I mean, I didn't hate it. I thought it was kind of fun, but at the same time, it felt like you opened up whatever music software and you were just like, let's make some shit right now. You spent like an hour, you cranked this shit out. And I mean, it wasn't ass. So that's an accomplishment. I'll say yay, but I mean, it's a 40-second song. I don't got much to say about it. Next, we got a song from Neil Hamburg. Listen, I don't know if you guys are trolling, so I don't know if they actually made that, because some people were trolling and sending in like, here's this album I made, The Money Store. You might not have heard of it. Anyways, this is a remix of Use This Gospel by Kanye. Yeah, I'm gonna be real with you. No out of 10 on this one. The song feels like a shitpost, which I'm assuming was probably a bit intentional. It's loud as fuck. It hurts your ears. Feels like an audio lobotomy. Really just makes me want to die. It's funny though, and I'm assuming that was your intention. So you achieved that, you know. You did that. But yeah, this is just like a huge shitpost in music form. Next, we have a song somebody submitted that they said their friends made, and they're in like a band. It's called Dropper, and the band is Bleeding Star. And all the artists I mentioned, I'll put in the description next to the timestamps. So feel free to check them out. Please do check these out. Smaller artists, we gotta support, you feel me? The song is just kind of a cool, short, indie experimental rock, you know, we'll put genres on it because why not? It's definitely enjoyable. I will say I find the lyrics though to be repetitive, and repetitive lyrics aren't bad by any means, but I think if they are going to be very repetitive, there should be kind of more vocal presence or like emotional variety on it, you feel me? The song, the lyrics are pretty much the same throughout the whole thing, and the instrumentals slowly kind of build and then break and then come back. And I wish the vocal delivery of these lyrics were kind of more like the instrumentals. I really would have liked some more emotion during the very intense moments on the song from the vocals, but they kind of just never really changed throughout. It's definitely not a bad song. It was enjoyable, but I'm definitely not like blown away by it. So yeah, I'll give it a yay. It's definitely not a bad song, and I enjoyed it overall. In our last single, we have a song called Acrylic, I think is how you pronounce it, by Mistel, which I think is how you pronounce it. This song I actually enjoyed a lot. It's this weird mix of sort of this very serene, almost lo-fi hip-hop-ish. I got heavy Nujabes vibes from this song, but then we dip into like these very drum-heavy, a bit more distorted moments as well. But then we come back and we join these pieces together either. There's also some great guitar and electronic stuff on this song. And based off your Bandcamp, I'm assuming you got a bunch of samples listed, so it's probably heavily sample based to some degree. But I really enjoyed this song. I thought it was fantastic. I'll just be real, it's probably my favorite single that I listened to from the submissions. Keep up the good work, I guess. It was really great. I thought it was unique. It didn't dwell on one thing for too long, but it also didn't leave it too short. And it was just a great track with a lot going on. And I'd love to hear a full album like that. So yeah, big yay, big good job on that one. Okay, now we got the albums to review. I'm standing up because this is a preface, okay? Please watch this part. If you're one of the people who submitted the albums and you're like, I just want to see mine, please watch this part. As I said earlier, I am rating your albums as I would rate any album. I'm not holding any punches. I'm not going to be like, oh, I thought this was great just because you submitted it. I'm rating your album like I would rate any artist, like I'd rate any famous musician, popular album, whatever, okay, right? I'm rating your shit honestly, how I felt about it, and how I would rate any album from any musician. Because I respect you guys as artists. You're doing something that I sure as hell could never do, and I want to treat your art as such and hold it to a high regard. But at the end of the day, I'm just a guy, you feel me? I'm just a random guy on the internet. This is just my opinion. Feel free to disagree. If you made these albums, maybe in the comments below, say a bit about your creative process or something, why you made the decisions you did, because I would love to hear from the people who made it directly. And for everybody else watching, please check out these albums that I'm about to talk about. If what I say about the albums sound interesting to you at all, feel free to check them out. All of them are going to be linked in the description below, so please check these albums out, support these artists. They're great people making great music, and yeah. And as always, you know, I don't know what I'm talking about, okay? I'm just yapping, I'm just saying shit about music, so don't take anything I'm saying too seriously. And yeah, let's get into the album reviews. Our first album is Heart. It's using like emoticons, okay? It's a heart like this. So I'm just gonna call it Heart by Konah. This is a hour-ish, 10-minute long ambient project. Hope you like ambient music because we got a fucking lot of it to talk about. The album is 9 songs long, and the song lengths range from anywhere from like 5 to 10-ish minutes. As the Bandcamp description says for this album, it is different headspaces and moods. And the album definitely reflects this. All the songs on here are these very atmospheric, ambient, who would have guessed. All the songs on here kind of create these different feelings and headspaces and different atmospheres within themselves. I will say right off the bat, I think the album as a whole lacks a bit of like connectiveness across all the songs. Yes, it is all ambient. Yes, it sounds somewhat similar. The album very much feels like a song by song, different ideas on different song, which is what you want to see, and it reflects kind of the, well, based off the Bandcamp, the idea of the album. But yes, there's definitely like not too much congruity, if I'm using that word right, you feel me? Also great album cover. Good job, I fuck with this album cover, it looks good. Now this isn't like pure ambient, this isn't like Saw 2, there's also instrumentation here and there mixed in very well. However, I find the album, despite the songs feeling relatively different across the board, there definitely lacks, in my opinion, highlights. There isn't too many highlights. The songs feel separated, but at the same time, there never really feels to be like a key moment, for me at least. All of these songs sound somewhat similar, and I get it's an ambient album, so they're kind of supposed to be. It kind of lacks moments that really make me be like, wow. As well, one of the longest songs, the outro on here, the track being called Will. I feel like I understand the idea behind it, but that doesn't mean I like it at all. Sorry. The last song is one of the longest. It's another ambient piece with a good atmosphere, but at the same time there's samples kind of laced into it where it's people talking in, I believe, Spanish. Okay, I could be completely wrong, but they're talking in another language that's not English. It plays throughout the whole thing. Noise kind of also picks up, and it feels very disorienting. It feels like your brain is getting fogged up, and I feel like that might have been the intention of the song. However, I don't fucking like it at all. I'm gonna be honest with you. I find the song to be very grating. Not a good time to listen to, but also it kind of goes on with its idea for too long where it's not interesting either. I feel like the song could have been 8 minutes, 6 minutes, and accomplish the same things it does in 11 minutes. That kind of general thought correlates to a lot of the songs on here, especially the longer ones. I feel like the ideas they get across could have been a bit shorter. They didn't really need their runtime, and I get the appeal of making long songs, but I do feel like a lot of these songs could have been, the long ones at least, could have been like 2 minutes shorter, 3 minutes, and would have made the album, I guess for me at least, again my opinion, better to get through. However, I'm gonna just say off the bat, okay? In terms of ambient music, I'm not your guy. I enjoy ambient music, but I'm not like die hard for this shit like some people. But at least for me, my pinnacle in terms of ambient music is Tim Hecker's Harmony and Ultraviolet, because that album was able to turn ambient music and electronic noise into something that feels incredibly emotional and human, despite being the furthest thing from it in terms of its creation. That album was able to build peaks of emotion, build suspense, and all these things that really just blow me away in terms of ambient music. And on this album, I'm gonna be real, I get none of that. When I finished Heart by Konah, I kind of just left being like, yeah, that was a good time. It was nice. And that's about it. There's not too much to write home about. There's not really highlights to speak of on most of it. And I find the outro to just not work, for me at least. I feel like the intention behind it, if I'm interpreting it right, you did what you set out to do, I guess, but it's just not for me. Because of that, I'm gonna give Heart by Konah a 6. That guy doesn't know what he's taught. What a fucking idiot. What a fucking idiot. What is that guy even saying? Nah, but basically, when I recorded the original part of this video, I had to schedule it in that room, and I was on a time frame, you feel me? So I listened to all the albums I reviewed in this video like 2-3 times. However, there's a few of the albums here where by the time I went to the place to record the video originally, I had listened to them a lot, but I wasn't 100% confident, or I wasn't 100% sure about my score, so I just ended up yapping, which is what I love to do. A few of these albums, like right now, I'm going to be kind of just adding something on. Few days later, I re-listen to it again, fully form an opinion, like right now. So Konah, Heart, I take back what I say a bit. I don't really feel like there needs to be exactly like these amazing like moments that I can pinpoint out. Ultimately, the whole point of the album is just to create these very varying atmospheres and moods that you're able to sink into, right? Like you're drowning in it. And I think the album is able to achieve that very well. Really, my only complaint is I wish there was some sort of slight transitions in these songs. Going track by track, I understand that each track is supposed to be its own sort of headspace, as it says in the Bandcamp. My issue is that each of these songs kind of ends with just a few seconds of silence, and then the next one starts with a few seconds of silence, right? It's like hard cutting in between them to separate each track. And my issue with that is I feel like I'm really getting in and sinking into each of these songs, and then it just cuts and now we're on to the new sound. And I think if these songs just transitioned ever so slightly into one another, I would have really just synced into the entire album. Because when it stops like that, it takes me out of the album for that moment in between track, and I'm like, okay, oh, we're on to the next track now. And I think for an ambient album like this, it would have helped a lot if these tracks would just flowed a bit better together, and I would have just kind of remained inside of the album throughout the listening experience. Besides that, what I also said before about the outro still stays. I don't like the outro. It really stands out in the track list. It's very different. I feel like I understand kind of the point of it, but it doesn't mean I necessarily like it. It just feels like it either shouldn't be on the album, or it could have been a lot shorter. It could have been 6 to 7 to 8 minutes and accomplished the same things it does in 11. Anyways though, so I'm gonna give Konah's Heart a re-listen. Final score a 7 out of 10. I did enjoy it quite a bit. Next album is Filter by Rat. I'm assuming is how you pronounce these things. This is a fucking gargantuan album, okay? This shit is long as fuck. 32 songs, nearly 2 hours long. Like, Jesus Christ. And it's on YouTube Music too. I feel like Sisyphus up here. To put it simply, this album is bloated. This does not need to be 2 hours long. This does not need to be 32 songs long. And yeah, I mean, you could have made like, I'm just gonna be real, you could have made like a 30 to 50 minute album and it would have been pretty good. Again, you're the artist, but it's just way too long. And it has a lot of stuff that just isn't on par with some of the songs on here. The album is, I guess, a mix of like kind of ambient, more electronic stuff. I'm gonna assume you were inspired by Aphex Twins. This feels very Aphex Twins inspired, but not like Saw 2 directly, more like a mix of Saw 1 and Saw 2, or like Richard D. James. There are moments here that are very enjoyable. I think the best songs on here are able to create a very nice bass atmosphere and then add very interesting fucking like drums and shit over the top that keep me engaged. My favorite song on here is probably Ghost Come, or the Strawberry whatever bonus track. I'm gonna be real, I think the outro song, bit tongue-in-cheek, it's called You Deserve This, and it's ass. Okay, that song fucking sucks, but I feel like that was the intention. You were supposed to be kind of like, haha, you deserve this. Here's this fucking loud-ass, disorienting-ass song. Throughout this album, there is a really good shorter album. There's a really great 30 or 40 minute album hidden in this thing. This does not need to be 2 hours long. It's incredibly bloated. And while there are moments of good songs and good ideas on here, it is just completely drowned out by the rest of the shit on here. And this kind of just drags the entire experience down. I will say though, you are able to create very nice atmospheres, and then you layer shit on top of that to make it very interesting, and you got something going for you. But with how bloated this album is, it just makes the whole experience not that great. I'm gonna give Filter by Rat a 4 out of 10. Next we have, I'm about to butcher this, let me try to read this. Falt, mich, zusammen, sortier, mich by Leekroom. I'm so sorry for how I pronounced that. I apologize in advance. I'm just gonna refer to this as Leekroom's album, because if I try to say that name again, I'm gonna have a stroke because I don't speak that language. Leekroom's album is 8 songs and 45 minutes, and across the board, it is very solid. I don't know, it's just kind of a slow-paced sort of rock album with these very kind of low-energy vocals mixed throughout it, and then there's moments where we kind of rise, and the vocals kind of rise as well, and then we drop back. The issue is, in my opinion, I find that to be very formulaic across the board. Almost all these songs kind of have a similar structure from my listenings of the album, and while the album does work together very well to kind of just like a very cohesive album, there is a feeling of formulaicness to this that makes the whole thing across the board get a tiny bit repetitive for me. I do think the outro is very nice. It's a long song, it's about 11 minutes, but it works very well to close this album off and kind of leave it with a nice cherry on top, you feel me? I do think the instrumentation on here is good. I wouldn't say anything particularly stands out or blows me away, but I can't really fault it for anything at the same time. I think it works well. I think it's enjoyable. The vocals though, I do think it's very, very samey across the board. As I said earlier, it's very low energy vocals across the whole album, but there's never really a vocal moment where I'm like, wow. And even though I do think it kind of fits with sort of what you were going for, the vocals on this album are, in my opinion, the weakest part by a long shot. I would have liked to see a bit more emotion on these vocals. The vocals across the album feel very low energy, very low emotion, and just kind of leave me wanting a bit more from them. Overall though, the album is very solid. From start to finish, this sticks with its ideas and sticks with them strong. I think across the board you did a very good job structuring these songs and the sequencing of the album. It flows very well. These songs all make sense in the order they are in, and I think it's enjoyable. There's nothing really wrong with the album. I just wish the vocals were higher energy and we had more vocal variation throughout the album, because it gets very samey, which leads to the album feeling a bit repetitive, and the instrumentation as well I feel like can be a bit formulaic across the album, and there's not too much variety or moments where I'm like, wow, that shit went hard, or wow, that was very interesting. It ends up just being a cool album where I'm like, yeah, that was good, but that's about it. There's nothing too much to write home about in terms of moments on here or things that really blew me away. I'm going to give Falt, mich, zusammen, sortier, mich by Leekroom a... Okay, back with revisions. Leekroom's album, nothing too serious. I stand by all what I said. It is still a very enjoyable, very solid, very concise album. I do stand by what I said. I don't know why when I recorded this, as I'm watching through the footage and editing, I was really big on mentioning fucking highlights and big moments. I don't know why I keep mentioning that. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, no, this album is still very, very enjoyable, and I enjoy it from start to finish. I stand by what I said though about the vocals and about it getting a bit repetitive, but that doesn't really take away from the album experience, and it doesn't really extend itself too much. So not a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 for Leekroom's album. Next, we have Lack of Air by Lanternfly. This is an album clocking in at 5 songs and 120 minutes. This album, I'll say right out the gate, do you like spraying? Do you like Lamb as an effigy? Check this shit out, because it probably is up your alley. Do you like post-rock? Check it out, because you might enjoy this. The album opens up with the songs Provide / Spectre, Trajectory. Oh my god, I can't talk. A 10-minute song that across the album is probably one of the lowest energy, but I also think it works as a great opener for this album. It's calm, it's almost like slowcore-ish if we're assigning genre labels. The vocals have this sort of dreariness to it. It feels like the calm before the storm, which it is, which I'll get into in a sec. But it's a very nice opener for this album. It eases you into kind of this melancholy and just self-reflection that the album goes through, that Lanternfly goes through throughout the album. This leads into the second track, My Yellow Grave of Sand and Sea, which is most definitely in my opinion, probably the best song on this album. The song explores lots of different sounds, different vocal deliveries, and across the board, despite being 20 minutes, it is very intriguing and makes me engaged the entire time. It starts off with this sort of slow droning and distortion and shit and sound, and then we eventually lead into this kind of loud, emotional part. But then we drop all the instrumentation, and Lanternfly is I can literally only describe it as a fucking mental breakdown. That's what's happening. It feels like a very raw and genuine song, and I don't even know if this is like acting. It feels like it's fucking real. It's this weird mix of like art and like real fucking like I'm going through some shit, because as Lanternfly is breaking down and berating themselves with all the faults, all these fucking mental things, they're still trying to sing through it, but it's obviously too hard to do that, and it makes for a very interesting and I don't know, I guess a bit disturbing, but it works very well. We also kind of break the fourth wall a bit on here, and Lanternfly starts talking about like why naming this song the way it is, the idea behind the song, and maybe the album itself as a whole. Start talking about this concept of a lack of air, feeling like a lack of air, how you need to breathe, which I guess I interpreted as, it's just, I mean, you need to breathe. You're feeling this lack of air, all these struggles, all these fucking mental shit is just weighing you down. You feel like you can't even breathe. By the end of the song, it feels like Lanternfly may have made a breakthrough. The struggle obviously isn't over, but it feels like recognition to the problem has been found. And it's a great song. It's a really interesting song from start to finish, and it is most definitely the fucking pinnacle of this album. The next song, Man Is But a Cock, I mean, it's about like kind of what you would expect based off the title name. It goes hard, it's loud, probably the most aggressive song of this album across this runtime, and I enjoy it. Now, this being said, the last two tracks, Synecdoche and You're Not and Sledgehammer, make up about half the album, about 40 minutes, and I find it too long for its own good. These tracks are most definitely slower, more meditative songs on the album, which makes sense because we're coming down from the high that was Yellow Grave and Man Is But a Cock. That being said, I don't think it needed to make up a half of this album. These songs are very drony, melancholic, atmospheric, but I think they go on for way too long, especially the last track. Of these two, I do think You're Not and Sledgehammer is the more interesting one of the two, and especially on the second half, where we continue to drone on with the instrumentation, but in the background you can almost hear what I think is just a very distorted like yelling, like crying out. It's a very great way to close the album. That being said though, these two songs did not need to make up half the album. I really think, again, I'm not the artist, but they could have been put into one, or they could have just each been like half as long as they are, and I think it would have made the album flow a lot better. Part of this is because we lose so much steam and energy and emotion that the album had up to this point in these last two songs, which I get is kind of the point. We've already reached our emotional peak throughout the album, but did the come down from this need to be 40 minutes? I don't really feel like it does. And these last two songs, for me at least, really kind of drag the whole album down. While I think the beginning starts very strong, I just think it ends on not the greatest two songs, and they end up kind of dragging the whole album experience as a whole down for me as well. Despite what I said though, I do think the first 2-3 songs are fantastic, especially My Yellow Grave and Sand. I think I said that right. My computer turned off, so I might have said that wrong. I find that song to be very fascinating, very interesting, and just easily the most captivating, best song of the album. IMO, you feel me? So yeah, I'm gonna give Lack of Air by Lanternfly a 6 out of 10. Next we have Brain Lump by Smidzik. I think that I said that right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. This album is kind of a good mix of ambient and I guess vaporwave, I guess I would say. Like 7 tracks, like 50 minutes or something. Overall, I mean, it's just kind of a cool vaporwave album. It's enjoyable to listen to. The album is structured pretty well. It flows from the start to the finish. I don't feel like anything feels out of place. But at the same time, it also feels like there's very little highlights. The only highlight for me at least was Today's Joy, where the sample use on that song was very nice. I had that shit stuck in my head for a day, and that song definitely, in my opinion, stands out as a highlight on the track list and probably the most unique song in my opinion. The rest of the songs on here are very much ambient, very much vaporwave, and because of this, they kind of end up bleeding together. While that makes the album very cohesive as a whole, it also makes it lack any sort of moments or kind of points where I could be like, oh yeah, that was really good throughout the whole album. This being said, I'm not that familiar with vaporwave, so again, take my opinion with a grain of salt. That applies to every album I've talked about so far and will next. Yeah, the whole album kind of just flows past you feel me? There's a moment on here, maybe a second moment as well, but overall the album just bleeds together too much. It's not a bad album by any means, but it's not my favorite thing I've ever heard either. I'm gonna give Brain Lump by Smidzik a 5 out of 10. So for Brain Lump, I don't know why I kept bringing up highlights. I stand by the score. It's still a 5 out of 10. I just gotta mention, it's just there is so little variation. It's ever so slight track by track, and really besides the second track, this entire thing sounds very similar to me, to my untrained ears, to my non-musician ears. It just ends up sounding incredibly similar, and it makes the album just drag. It's definitely not bad, like it's fine the whole time, but it's not amazing either. That's why 5 out of 10. Okay, yep. Next we have Mind Matter from Indiana Volume 1. What a fucking title. By Shinrei. Now this album, if you call it that, is super short. Okay, I think it's a bit more of like an EP, but that's just my opinion. This is a super short album that's basically kind of like electronic, dare I say digital hardcore. And I mean, honestly, it kind of just goes hard. The first song opens the album fine, but the first two songs definitely are just lower energy compared to the last three. And I think in general, they're just not as good as the last three. I find the last three songs to be really great on here. They're super energetic. I could easily see somebody rapping or singing over these as well. I think that'd be really interesting to hear. But I mean, there's just not too much to talk about on this one. It's super short, and it feels more like a collection of possible ideas more than a album or EP sort of idea, which I mean kind of makes sense with the title and it being called Volume 1. But I like what I'm hearing. I don't hate it by any means. I enjoyed about half of it, but overall just, you know, there's no cohesion. These songs, I kind of wish a lot of these songs were just a bit longer. Like another minute or two on these songs could have really fleshed it out and would have made these all like very interesting. But what I'm hearing, I think it's really good, but as it is, it sounds more like just kind of testing shit out more than an actual project, which I guess is what projects are for. But I'd be very interested to see what you do with this sound in the future. And I don't know, I really could see some rapping or some vocals on here making these instrumentals even better than they already are. As I said, I do think the first two songs are definitely not nearly as good as the last three, and overall the project just feels very kind of, you're just spitballing shit. Some of it sticks though, so keep it up, I guess. I'm gonna give Mind Matter from Indiana Volume 1 by Shinrei a 5 out of 10. Next we have a project called 100 Days of Music by Jam. This is part 1 of the project. They say in their Bandcamp description that this is just the first half and they're working on the second one, so there we go. As you can guess from the title, this is very much experimentation. There's no idea of like, let's make this album and have it all this or whatever. This is just 50 songs every day, different ideas, nothing's mixed, nothing's mastered, fuck all that shit. It feels very raw for that. It feels incredibly genuine and raw and just pure kind of art. This being said though, as with kind of just the concept and what this album is, doesn't feel like an album, and it's very hit or miss. It kind of just, what songs are good, what songs aren't good. Some of the experimentation's kind of nice, some is just fucking around, it's kind of whatever. And it's funny though sometimes. There's moments on this album though where a song or two really hits. There's a few covers as well. I do think the track run from around track 18 to 28, I liked everything I was hearing on that. I think in general, more of the kind of electronic and digital stuff on this album I ended up enjoying a lot. I mean, there's not much to write home about. Please check this album out. There's lots of different ideas going on here. It almost feels like I'm watching an artist kind of just explore what they're capable of and what they want to do with their art in real time, and it's a very interesting experience. However though, I mean, most of it I do think is kind of just whatever. As I said, that 18 to 28 run I did think was pretty good, but the rest of it is not bad. There's moments where a song is interesting, but overall it's just kind of feels like I'm peeking into somebody's artistic journey, which is cool, but there are going to be lows when you're starting off, you feel me? But this album does make me excited for what Jam might do in the future. I think hearing a fully realized album from Jam could be pretty interesting. So I'm looking forward to the future, but for now I'm going to give 100 Days of Music by Jam a 5 out of 10. Next we have Monolith by Roan, LaMonico, I think is how you say it. I'm pretty sure I got that one right. This is a 5-song album, about an hour-ish. I think probably more like an hour and 10. I don't know, Bandcamp doesn't say total time and I can't do math. Not smart enough for that. When Roan submitted this, they said that it was an improv album, and I'm gonna just be real with you, I could fucking tell. The best way I can describe it, it's grating, it's very experimental, very disorienting, and ultimately just not interesting or fun to listen to at all. I'm not saying an album has to be fun. There's plenty of albums where they're very much not fun, but they're very interesting. But this album lacks either. I can tell you're doing improv because there's so many ideas being thrown around all the time, but nothing ever sticks in my opinion. There's never moments. The album as a whole feels cohesive because, well, I mean, nothing ever lands and it's always doing that, so, you know, it kind of just fits the whole thing. There's times where there's guitar, there might be a sample, there's piano, there's all this shit going on, but nothing feels structured, and I get it's improv, but nothing ever like sticks or starts flowing together. It all just feels like very slapped on, very just kind of whatever, and the whole album just feels like a chore to get through. It's way too long for its own good, especially when none of the ideas are interesting or stick, and when I'm listening to it, I'm almost just waiting for it to be over. It feels like almost when we're finally getting something, we changed for some reason, and I get it's an improv album, but there is quite literally almost nothing to enjoy about this album or anything I find interesting to any capacity. And it's just way too fucking long for its own good. I'm gonna give Monolith by Roan, LaMonico a 1 out of 10. Next we have The Palms by Max Chalkley, I think is how you say it. This is a short and sweet 4-track long, about like 30 something minutes ambient album, which, I mean, you can kind of guess based off the album cover is about the palms. Go into this imaginary vacation place to get away from everything. The album opens up with this idea with having like train tracks mixed with this ambient atmosphere that's able to create almost feeling like you are leaving and going to this place. Like you're staring out the window as you're just about to arrive on your journey to your vacation, to the palms, right? You get it? Right. That being said though, the intro track's about 15 minutes, and I'm gonna be honest, I didn't think it needed to be 15 minutes. I think the ideas explored on it could have easily been encapsulated in a 8 to 10 minute track, and I think if this track was shorter, it kind of just would have made the album open better and felt more cohesive across the board. I think the other tracks on here are good. They are also these serene, beautiful tracks. It's very pretty ambient music, and it really does get you into the feeling when you look at the album cover, when you look at the kind of concept of it, of just being in this imaginary tropical place, kind of going to this place, this vacation, and just, I don't know, fucking feeling the emotions or something. While these tracks are nice, they're beautiful, they're very serene, they are very, I guess a bit one note, one sort of idea behind them, and they stick to that hard throughout its runtime and throughout the whole album as a whole. There's not too much kind of just interesting changes or sort of ideas happening, and I get that's kind of the point. You're trying to make this very beautiful, serene sort of experience, but because of that, it kind of makes it less interesting across the board and across the listening experience. I think part of this is just because I think the opener is too long. You introduce us to this headspace and to this atmosphere, but it really did not need to be 15 minutes long. And in my opinion, it immediately, where like I'm getting into it at about, you know, 6 to 10 minutes, I'm getting into this first track, getting into this idea of the album, but then it just keeps going when I really don't think it needs to. I think it really could have been compressed down to be shorter, and that would have just helped the album as a whole be better. And the rest of the tracks, while I enjoy them and I think they contribute to this kind of idea and space you're trying to put us in throughout the album, I do think there's not anything huge to write home about. They're nice tracks, they're beautiful, but that's all I can really say about them. That being said though, the album overall is very pretty, very nice, and I think you accomplished mostly with your goal of kind of introducing and putting your listener into this, the palms, right? This vacational, liminal ass space. So I'm gonna give The Palms by Max Chalkley a okay, The Palms, right? I know, again, I keep bringing up fucking highlights. I'm really sorry about that. Pretty much though, my whole thing is just, I think the first track could have been shorter, and also the other tracks, they're not bad, they're good, but it's like nothing that crazy. And ultimately the project, I feel like, could have had a bit more runtime if the first track was a bit shorter and these following tracks were explored a bit more, because I feel like these following tracks, you kind of get into it and then it ends. They're very short. I wish these tracks were maybe 6 minutes or 7 minutes and kind of explored a few different ideas within them, because they're a tiny bit one note in my opinion. And while I like the first track and what it does for the album, I really do feel like it could have been like 10 minutes tops, did not need to be 15. So yeah, I stand by my score, 6 out of 10. And our last album is some shit in Japanese that I don't know how to say. It's on screen now, by Fantasy. Now this is a Broken Transmission album. That's what's on Bandcamp. This is the first Broken Transmission album I've ever listened to. From what I understand of I think it's a subgenre of vaporwave, it's pretty much made up of commercials and broadcasts specifically, and it kind of just creates this nostalgic, you know, vaporwave shit within the album. The album's 13 songs long, I think just about 30 minutes. It's not too long. It's a very fun listen. I've never heard any Broken Transmission music before, but I enjoyed myself heavily throughout this. You kind of immediately get into this kind of nostalgic sort of vibe throughout the whole thing, with all the samples of these commercials and these broadcasts playing through, and I think it does a good job by keeping stuff very short. I think if this album was 10 or 20 minutes longer, I don't think it would have worked. It keeps it very short and sweet, and because of that, it works very well. It feels like we're jumping through these stations late at night, and it's a very fun listen. And when there are a few songs that are a bit longer, 3 to 5 minutes instead of just one, those songs tend to be the best on the album. The stuff sampled on those songs loop a bit more, but it's stuff I want to hear looped more. It's stuff I could hear looped for fucking an hour, right? Because it's very catchy, it's very serene, but it also has that hint of nostalgia, and it just feels like a very fun time to listen to. While I'm no expert on Broken Transmission, I don't know, I found it to be a very interesting gateway into the genre, because this album made me more interested in what the genre is as a whole. It was short, it was sweet, it was straight to the point. The album doesn't overstay its welcome by any means. It uses the samples very well in my opinion, and I do like how the samples we started with, we kind of hear near the end as well, making the album feel very round circle and cohesive. It's a very fun album, and I enjoyed it heavily. That being said though, the album does lack a bit of emotion that I've heard on other vaporwave, and while it's a fun time, there's also nothing too huge to be like, yeah, that was gas, that shit was fire. But I did enjoy myself heavily throughout this album, and it makes me very interested in the genre itself. So I'm gonna give this album by Fantasy a 7 out of 10. So that is your guys' music reviewed, rated. This was a very interesting video to make. It was very cool to hear smaller artists, your music, hearing music that isn't just the RYM fucking top 300 is a very different experience for me, but I had a fun time making this video. And as I said before, I am just a guy on the internet. Do not take my opinion that seriously. I know nothing about making music or really music in general. I just like to yap. That's why I made this channel. I just like yapping about music. Don't take anything I say too seriously. If you're one of the artists in this video, please feel free to comment below, maybe elaborating on your album a bit, talking about your creative process. I am very interested in hearing about it. Feel free to check out the Discord in the description below if you're looking for a music community. I know this is a long video to return with. I can't promise any sort of upload schedule. I'll upload my upload. I don't know how frequently, and I don't know when the next time will be, because right now I'm just locked in for school. I'm trying not to fail, you feel me? Yes, thank you for supporting the channel. If you like this video, I don't know, thank you, I guess. Feel free to check out my Patreon as well. I don't have my patrons pulled up right now, and I'm about to run out of time for using this space, so I don't want to get kicked out. So these are the patrons. Look at that. Look at that person, and that person, and that person, and that person, and that person. Thank you all for supporting the channel. It's just $1 tier. There's some unreleased footage on there, as well as you will be shown here. So thank you guys for supporting the channel. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a good day, and yeah, bye.